Hi guys, in this tutorial we're going to look at one more example of where to use hand or. In the last tutorial, if you remember, we also look at an example so we could tell the difference between hand and or, and based on that understanding we'll be able to know what exactly the requirement wants us to use. Are we going to use hand to meet the requirement, or are we going to use or to meet the requirements? So in this tutorial, we're going to look at one more example. Let's say we have a requirement that says return, return first name, department, yes, just first name and department of, say, of employees that work in clothing department, that work in clothing department, and region 3. So what this requirement is saying is I want to see the first name and the departments of those employees, or maybe, and also let's add region ID as well. So we want to see three columns. So return first name, region ID, departments of employees that work in clothing department, and um, region ID 3 and region ID 3. Now, if we want to make this compulsory, then we'll say select first name, region ID, department from employees. So what conditions do we have? Those employees working in clothing. So we say where departments equals clothing. What other condition do we have? And those working in clothing, they must also be working in region ID 3. So then we say and region ID equals 3. So let me make a space. Up here we have the requirement, here we have the query. So when I run this, now let's run from here first. Okay, I'm going to ignore this second filter for a second. So let's see those employees that work in clothing department. When I run this, we have 49 records. So we have 49 employees working in clothing department. And when I scroll down, you're going to see that we have 49. See, we have 49 and they all work in clothing. Okay, but that's just one filter. So let's look at the other filter. And region ID equals 3. So now they must work in clothing and their region ID must be region 3. But what we have presently before we run, you see now that we have 49 employees in clothing. See, region ID is 4. So this Sydney guy works in clothing, but he works in region 4. Harding works in clothing, works in region 7. But if we run this together, we are making this compulsory. So it has to be an employee that works in clothing and region ID 3. So let's see how many of those employees that meet this requirement. They work in clothing, their region ID is 3. Now we have just 3. Region ID is 3, department is clothing. So we have just 3 employees that meet this requirement. So whenever you use hand, you're making your conditions compulsory. If you remembered your board mass in high school. So if I do this, that's what hand is doing. Because once you put something in parentheses like this, you're making it just one condition. So the way SQL is reading this is to make these two filters. The first filter is department has to be clothing. The second filter is region ID has to be 3. So it's making them as one, seeing this as one. So region ID has to be 3, department has to be clothing. So this is making this as one. Okay? So when I run this, is the same thing. It's still giving me 3 records. So that's what AND is doing. It makes your conditions. Even if you specify 5 conditions and say where first name equals port, is making the 3 conditions as one. So it has to be port, department has to be clothing, region ID has to be 3. So if I had and say and first name equals this guy, ports. Let's see what we have. So from here, I'm running this query. We want to see first name, region ID, department, but we have 3 conditions now, where department equals clothing, and region ID equals 3, and first name equals ports. So we are making 3 conditions into one because we are using hand. Let's run this. Now we have just one. Hand means it must meet all the conditions. The name has to be port, region ID has to be 3, department has to be clothing. So let me remove this third condition. So let's stick to just these 2 conditions. What if I change this to all? What happens? Don't forget the focus of this tutorial is to see an example of where to use hand or what hand does and what all does. Okay, so if I change this to all, what you are saying is where department equals all, where department equals clothing, or department or region ID equals 3. So when it's evaluating this first result, it doesn't care what the region ID is. When it's going to evaluate these 2 conditions as different conditions. It's not making them compulsory because we are not using hand, we are using her. So it's going to look at this first, go to row 1. Okay, do I have anyone working in clothing? I don't care if the region ID is 3 or not. So it's going to run through 1,000 records with this first condition. It's not running them together because you are saying or. So look at the first row, is the department clothing? Then it picks it. Go to the second row, is the department clothing? It picks it. At this time when it's evaluating the first condition, it doesn't care what you put here. This is all. So it's not compulsory when it's evaluating this condition. So by the time I run this, you're going to see different kind of departments because when it's running the first one, It's not looking at the second one because the syntax is or. Okay. And when it's running the second filter, region ID, it doesn't care if the department is clothing. As long as it's region ID 3, it returns something. It doesn't care what the department is. So let me run this so we see what exactly. Now we have 199 rows. When I use hand, we only have 3 rows, 3 employees that meet this condition. But when I use or, we have 199. If I scroll up, I'm going to remove these requirements so we can make some space. I really want you to pay attention to this concept of hand and her, because the truth is at work you're going to be having so many requirements that would demand the use of hand and her, where you have to use hand and her together in one statement, or where you have to use hand alone, or where you will have to use her alone. So you really need to know which one is applicable to your requirements. So please pay attention. Don't mind watching this over and over again. Once you really know where to use hand and where to use her, you are good to go. Okay. So now let's look at this. Where department equals clothing or region equals ID. I'm going to order this so we could see. Let me order this. Order by um, maybe 3. Okay. So I'm ordering by department. Column 1, column 2, column 3. We have discussed this in some tutorials back. So if you are confused as to why I'm putting 3 here, it's the same thing as putting order by department. So you can look for my previous video on order by. So let's run this. Now you see what I'm saying. Region ID is 3, but department is automotive. It doesn't care about this because it's optional. Or is making the first condition optional, is making the second condition optional. So when it's evaluating this condition, it doesn't care what the region ID is. When it's evaluating this condition, it doesn't care what the department is. So now we have region ID 3, which meets this condition. But look at what we have in department, automotive. Even though it was not mentioned in our query. So you really need to know where to use or as to where to use hand. You see, we have region ID 3, but we have all kind of departments because all means that evaluate this independent of others. So evaluate this first. When you are done, come to this. And when you are evaluating this, don't care about what I have here. That's what you're saying. Okay? And so please take your time, study this query. Um, we had a previous video too that's also expatiated on this concept of hand and or. So in the next tutorial, we're going to look at an example of a statement where we can combine both and or, and hopefully it's going to make this concept clearer to you. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next one.